All right, Scott, Colby's Green Wave Yamamoto has landed. Is available right now on colbyplus.com.
Oh man, I'm so glad to hear that. I can't wait to get my new 3.2 Green Yamamoto, Green Plus Yamamoto. And yeah,
It's the entire suit is made of Yamamoto number 40, which is limestone neoprene, which is you think limestone, okay, cool. It's earth friendly instead of petroleum based neoprene. However, it's also superior. It has better heat retention than standard petroleum derived foam. The flexibility is unmatched. The green wave branding is because not only the limestone, but they use this 100% recycled plant based jersey on the interior lining, which offers 500% multi directional stretch, double the strength, and also significantly lighter than the traditional jersey. So it's an incredible suit. It's triple glued and blind stitched, rubberized liquid seal as well, so far less leakage. It's the best suit on the market.
yeah. Luckily, I do have a 4.3 that I'd been toying with until the water got too warm here. But man, with this super El Nino winter coming up, there's going to be a lot of time in the water, which means we're going to need to stay warm. And I'm psyched on my new Colby Plus. It's going to be, it's going to keep me buttery, toasty, all those good phrases.
Well, the idea is they get, a limited amount of stock in their shipment. So get it now while you can in June, even if you're going to reserve it for the fall and the winter. They may not be available or there may be longer lead times at that point. So you might as well grab it now and you can get it at colbyplus.com direct to consumer. It's how they keep the prices low. But yeah, smoking wetsuit.
And of course, you can meet Rob and the Colby Plus team at the Boardroom show in October and get all the insight, all your questions answered if you have any.
They're always up to something new too. Like the product is kind of best in market, but also they're always developing something. So last year at the Boardroom show is when they introduced me to this Green Wave product, which wasn't available then, and also the 3D printed booties. They were kind of displaying then, even though it wasn't ready to order. So yeah, come to the Boardroom show, try this stuff on if you want, just feel it with your hands and then see what they're up to for 2027. And I know you were talking about Maurice Cole being featured at the Boardroom show as the icon honoree, but one of his demands was that Trip Foreman join. Did you ever get Trip to commit to coming?
Yes, Trip Foreman from Real Water Sports is going to be at the Boardroom show. He's completely involved. In fact, Real Water Sports, as you may know, David, is the presenting sponsor of this year's Best in Show board build off. And the category is Super El Nino Big Wave Gun, again, presented by Real Water Sports. The Boardroom show is giving $5,000 to the first prize, first place board builder. It's a winner take all situation, and people are excited and people are entering boards, and it's taken off like wildfire. And of course, all eyes are on the Super El Nino Big Wave Winter, and so a big wave gun makes tons of sense. And we're excited to have Trip and the crew once again at the show, the Boardroom show in October.
Good. Yeah, it's been too long. I haven't seen Trip in a fair bit. So glad to see him. Of course, realwatersports.com is their website. They have a 1,500 surfboard inventory, which includes Maurice Cole's, as it should, Christensen's, Seiko, who you love, Roger Hines. And then, of course, I talked about last week, they just got a shipment of 80 new Channel Island surfboards. And if you do choose to buy a surfboard there, I'm going to ask that you buy one additional product because this is one of my favorite products, and it's the Channel Islands Snuggie 2.0. Do you have a Snuggie?
I don't know if I have a Snuggie. What? Oh, it's a board bag.
The board bag Snuggie.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was something that you wore, perhaps like a sweater of some sort, or
I could put it on like a sweater.
Snuggie. You know, it feels like it could be a blanket.
I do feel like they borrowed that branding from the wearable like robe poncho thing, but we won't tell anybody. Snuggie 2.0, this one has padded rail protectors, which is really nice, and the material is just this super soft fleece, padded nose as well. So check it out, the Snuggie 2.0 board bags. I mean, everything from blankets to coolers to Florence hydro tights, rash guards, helmets, fins,
I've got
traction.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff's all. I've got that stuff on the brain right now. All the goodies for traveling.
Well, you can get it all at realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing.
Yeah, guy. David, it's Spit. It's the Spit Podcast. David Lee Scales, Scott Bass, and we're talking all things surf. What's happening in the surf world on this June 24th?
That's right.
Oh man, I'm getting my dates wrong. I thought it was the 23rd.
I
Okay,
like
we're
it.
back.
I like it. Bring more of that poetic justice to Spit.
Some lady from Washington, D.C. reached out to me the other day and did a full interview for her Substack based on my surf reports.
I saw that.
Did you? Oh, I sent that to you. I was bragging. I apologize. I was like, look at this.
Congrats.
It was actually a good interview, which is why I sent it to you. Sometimes they're kind of not so good. But
Yeah, you made the big time.
dude, this little vanity pea shooter brain of mine, I'm like, I'll take any kind of
Validation.
yeah, I guess that's the word. Yeah.
Well, this is not an advertisement, but what's the Happy Shack since you're wearing the hat?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You know what it is? I think actually is there's a buddy of mine, Steven, has a house, owns a house on Kauai, down there on the Vecke Road at Pine Trees, and I think he calls his house the Happy Shack, and I think you get these hats if you visit there.
I've always wanted a house that had a name.
Name yours. Let's name yours.
There was Monticello. There's these iconic ones. Shenandoah was Wayne Newton's. Like, I think it has to be of a certain stature, square footage.
What was Michael Jackson's?
Neverland Ranch.
Neverland Ranch.
Yeah, I don't want mine to be known in that way, but I guess what I mean is I don't want to just name my house. I would love to own a home that demanded a name of its own.
Right. Well, they're kind of like nicknames, right? You can't really name it yourself. It kind of has to come organically, maybe from somebody else. A lot of times real estate agents will list your home like with some kind of corny thing. Like,
Yeah.
I know when we bought ours, it was called Buttercup, because it had this like yellow paint on it. They're like, Buttercup.
Yeah. Buttercup didn't stick.
Well, either did the paint. We
Right.
moved on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Happy Shack not only is a great name, but he even has merch for his house, which is the next level.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. And look, if anyone needs a place to rent on Kauai, reach out and I'll send you the information. I think you can probably Google it. Maybe even it's a rent. It's an Airbnb type thing.
Yeah. Well, look, in surf news, Brazil has been taking place since we last spoke. They're on a 2-day hold now as of this morning. So hopefully they'll get back up and running on Friday and finish the event. There's only a few heats left. And then last night, How Surfers Get Paid got dropped by Stab Magazine. So lots to discuss this week.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that Stab Magazine. And I also have Surfer X, my attempt, Who Said That type of situation here, where I try to stump you and the listeners. If you're at all interested in that, we can start there.
I am interested. Last week's was a great one, and I got some feedback from listeners who was James Jones his name?
Yeah, James.
Yeah, listeners who had personal experiences with James Jones, and a couple of stories came in, so that was cool.
All right, well, here's the Surfer X. This is actually a quote from a surfer, and you're going to attempt to narrow down out of the 4 options I give you who actually said this. And I quote David, "I thought Big Makaha and the North Shore's outer reefs were the next step for me as a surfer," said Surfer X. "I was wrong. There were lessons to be learned at Pico Alto. One of them being, no matter where it's breaking, a big wave is a big wave, period." Who was Surfer X, David? Who said that? Was it A, Ken Bradshaw, B, Felipe Pomar, C, Laird Hamilton, or D, Mark Foo?
I'm going to go Mark Foo.
That's correct, David. It was Mark Foo, and sort of the Pico Alto reference. If you scoured the magazines back in the 80s and 90s, you knew that at one point Mark Foo was surfing Pico Alto and going there to in a quest for riding big waves.
Yeah, fascinating. Great figure who's the only time his name comes up, I feel like the only thing that's discussed is his death, but not enough about his career is discussed.
Well, I remember as a kid watching one of the surf movies. I don't know if it was Steven Soderbergh's or Hal Jepsen or what, but before Mark Foo was like a big wave surfer type, there was a scene where he had a twin fin. He was on the South Shore, and the scene opened up, and he was dancing to disco music. It was like 76. It was prime disco. And he was doing full like dance moves to a disco beat, some Kool in the Gang or something. And it was pretty funny. For whatever reason, that sticks out to me. That's my...
Did you say Steven Soderbergh?
Soderbergh.
Oh, okay.
Steve Soderbergh.
Okay.
I did say Soderbergh. I meant Soderbergh.
I was going to say Steven Soderbergh's like a Hollywood film director.
Yeah, he's also made surf movies.
This guy's got range. From Ocean's 11 to surf films. Pretty incredible. So high-profile big wave rider from the North Shore, Hawaii, whose 1994 death at Mavericks became one of the surfing's national and international news stories. Foo was actually born in Singapore. Did you know that?
No. I thought he was from Florida originally, but...
Well, we'll probably get there. Yeah, Pensacola. He spent 2 years living in Pensacola. So he was born in 1958 in Singapore, the son of a Chinese-American photojournalist who worked for the U.S. Foreign Service. He moved with his family to Honolulu at age 4, did not learn to swim until he was 10, began surfing the following year, then moved to Rockville, Maryland. Foo later spent 2 years living in Pensacola, Florida, then reunited with his family in Honolulu, and then eventually moved to the North Shore in 1975 after graduating from high school and looking for a professional surf career. Frustrated with the pro tour, his best year-end ranking was 66th in 1979. Foo diversified. He wrote articles for surf magazines, opened a North Shore bed and breakfast catering to surfers, and did voiceovers for surf movies and on-site announcing at surf contests. Hosted a surfing radio show. We are in good company there with him. And then teamed up with fellow North Shore surf journalist Mike Latronic to co-host surfing's cable television show called H2O, which I remember well. Foo's wave riding improved steadily, and he tucked his compact 5'8", 135-pound frame into a low crouch and dissected Hawaii's most powerful surf in tidy, efficient lines. He also worked closely with top surf photographers and became one of the sport's most visible figures, made the cover of Surfer and Surfing magazines in 1978, was often featured in surf movies including Fantasy, Follow the Sun, Totally Committed. All of it contributed to what Foo, in his 4-color glossy stock resume, called a multifaceted professional profile. In that same resume, Foo modestly referred to himself as surfing's consummate living legend. Intelligent, driven, and dependable, well-versed in the language of marketing, Foo became one of the first surfers to be sponsored by a non-surfing corporation, including a modest deal with Anheuser-Busch Brewery in mid-1981. If Foo was at times opportunistic, even crass, he also had a great appreciation of surfing's mystery, power, and beauty. Quote, "How can you describe the feeling of looking into a 30-foot tube, like a hole in the ocean?" End quote. Foo rhetorically asked in a surf magazine article, "How do I convey the sights, sounds, and sensations that just a handful of humans out of the billions of humans past, present, and future will ever experience? What's it like to walk on the moon, Mr. Armstrong?" End quote. Foo gained notice as a big wave rider on January 18th, 1985, when he paddled into the teeth of a 50-foot Waimea closeout set, and shortly thereafter, with hundreds of people on the beach watching, tried to ride a 30-footer. He didn't make the wave, but wrote about the experience for the surf press and would later memorably describe the waves he'd seen that day at Waimea as belonging to the unridden realm. A feud had meanwhile developed between Foo and Texas-born big wave rider Ken Bradshaw, and in 1988 the two were profiled in an Outside Magazine article feature titled, quote, "The Divided Rulers of Waimea Bay," end quote. In that article, and in dozens of private and public conversations, Foo talked about the possibility of dying in big surf, telling one TV interviewer that it would be a glamorous way to go, a great way to go. I mean, that's how I would like to go out, end quote. Foo also acknowledged that he was an unlikely big wave rider, as he was afraid of heights and speed and didn't think of himself as athletically inclined. Foo was the first to try a tri-fin surfboard at Waimea and was the first to use a leash in big surf. In 1986, he finished runner-up to Clyde Eichow in the Quicksilver in memory of Eddie Eichow contest at Waimea, and he competed in the 1990 event as well. Foo visited Mavericks for the first time on December 23rd, 1994, flying over from Hawaii with rival then-turned friend Ken Bradshaw, and died after wiping out on a 15-foot wave. The evidence wasn't conclusive, but he was probably driven to the bottom where his leash or surfboard snagged on an outcropping of rocks where he then drowned. He was engaged to be married at the time. Along with lengthy write-ups in surf press, Foo's death was covered by the Network News, MTV, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Outside, Rolling Stone, Spin, Paris Match magazines. Foo is a central figure in the 2000 published Mavericks, The Story of Big Wave Surfing, and Foo's rivalry with Bradshaw is also chronicled in Andy Martin's 2007 book, Stealing the Wave, the epic struggle between Bradshaw and Mark Foo.
Wow, that's quite a great history lesson. Thank you for that. And, well, I was looking up Fantasy, the surf movie, because you mentioned that he was in some surf movies. I didn't find the segment where he's dancing. I'm not sure if it was that one, but it was one in that era, like mid-70s. But anyway.
Well, I don't think I mentioned it, but obviously that was all I was reading from the Encyclopedia of Surfing, eos.surf, Matt Warshaw's website.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks for doing that. And it sort of leads into sort of perhaps the big news, right, which is the drop of how surfers get paid, bounty hunters.
So I'll start by saying I think this is the best episode they've ever done.
Wow, okay.
I say this often. I say this every time they do something, but I think that they do learn as they go and things get better. It covered so much ground. I mean, it doesn't go back to the origins of big wave riding, but it goes back to 1997, and it goes all the way through to modern day, or I guess 2025 is where it kind of ends. But it also reminds me how it's crazy how different big wave surfing is compared to the surfing that I'm paying attention to, or what I just consider surfing. Big wave surfing is an entirely different sport. And as they detail the different records that were broken, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that, but like I don't have it committed to memories in the way that I do world title winners or big airs that have been done that were landmark airs or big barrels that have been ridden. The big wave realm is just off to the side. And so I found this to be like a very thorough education that somebody like me who pays very close attention to surfing was very unaware of most of it, you know?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I too feel like I was getting a little, like sort of some of the dust was shaken off of my memory regarding what the dates and what occurred. And
well, specifically, you and I are covering Surf News Weekly. So much of what this showcased was news stories that were taught to me from CNN or other mainstream sources. Like when there is a big wave event that happens and somebody wins some sort of a record, I don't really know about it until mainstream media tells me about it, which is weird because I'm the one delivering surf news. Yet this is outside of surf news for me. I mean, that's a blind spot for me ultimately. I'm not like, I'm pointing the finger of blame at me, but I've just always interpreted it as different. And this reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think on some level, look, big wave surfing is something that's in many ways, you and I are enthusiast surfers. We've been involved in this thing for decades, but big wave surfing isn't really a part of what I consider myself or what I'm close to. Like, I mean, I have done some of that, but it's not how I engage in the sport at all. And so because of that, it doesn't really cling on to my memory banks the way like, the Andy Kelly, 2006 stuff does, or 2003, like, so yeah, it's a little bit removed. And so it was nice to get like I say, to get sort of what were those books that you used to read that were summaries of,
Encyclopedia Britannica.
no, you
Oh,
used to,
Cliff's Notes.
yeah, Cliff Notes. It was
Yeah,
like a Cliff Notes kind of episode, right? And the Bounty Hunters title, it was just really exploring the history of the big wave payoff,
yeah,
and in its various forms from, the K2 challenge they went through, the Double XL Awards, the Billabong Odyssey, the Guinness Book of World Records. They kind of touched on some of that stuff. They went into, of course, the Nazare conundrum, if you will, the drama that surrounded Maya Gabeira's wipeout and rescue, and she was unconscious, and that was horrific, and all of the politics in that, and the personal dramas that unfolded because of that, and yeah,
I was unaware, by the way, of her rift with Carlos Burle. Like, and they didn't explicitly state it, but it was clear as day that he
yeah,
has one, which by the way, they were partners. He trained Maya. So they were very, very tight for a long period of time. And just to kind of retell the story real quick for those who haven't seen the episode yet, he was towing her into that wave. She wiped out. He went in to rescue her, and he didn't do a really great job at it. In her retelling of it, he was not trained adequately to do the rescue that he needed to do for her, and he basically left her hanging. He ultimately then, is that not how you interpreted it?
I mean, that might be the way I didn't interpret it that way. That
That's what she
she,
said
I
on
I would
Graham.
suggest to you that he saved her life.
In the end, he did save her life for
Okay,
sure.
so it's kind of hard to be
Well,
disappointed that
that's
somebody
for you
saved
to.
your life.
I'm just recounting what she said to
No,
Graham
I
Bensinger.
didn't.
Yeah,
I did sense that there was obviously things that should have been done differently, like probably her not being out there. Perhaps she
she did.
herself said she had major. I don't know if major is the right word, but she was not feeling it. She didn't really want to go on these waves, and Carlos was kind of going, "It's showtime! Like this is why we're here. Like what have we been training for?"
Correct. So that was her. You just stated her perspective as well. She says in the interview, which wasn't with Stab's team, it was with Graham Benziger, who's a interviewer. You could find that interview on YouTube. She states, basically, he forced me to go. I was uncomfortable. I felt like I wasn't ready, and he was the one telling me to go. Stab Magazine does interview Carlos, so they cut to him. He did not state it that way. He did not remember it as me pressuring her into it. He remembered it as, we're a team, this is what we trained for, we were there to go. So I think that's also interesting. And then once she's put in the situation she's put in, and she said, it's a wave I would not go on today, I knew I was uncomfortable. Then she ends up on the inside drowning. Carlos tries to rescue her a couple of times. He misses. He bumps her with the ski. He drags her lifeless body. Like, it's very harrowing to watch. Anyways, hearing both of their perspectives, it's clear that that became a rift that they still haven't, as of the time of them retelling this story, it seemed like they haven't recovered the rift.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, they can both be correct, and I think they both are correct. Like they both had their sort of vision of how it played out, and they both had their remembrances of how it played out, and I think they're both right. Like I don't think there's like there shouldn't be a situation where we're saying this person was right and this person was wrong. I think that they both have their experience, and it is what it is, and you can't deny it. And one of the things that I found fascinating, which this is one of the things that I learned, was this Sebastian Studner. I don't know how to say his last name. I apologize, Sebastian, but this big wave surfer, Sebastian, sort of in the beginnings of this episode, he's the first one to just kind of go, Carlos blew it, and I would, like it kind of threw me for a loop. Like, oh, we have conflict here. I didn't know that Sebastian and Carlos weren't buddies. That was news to me that there was major conflict, and it was pretty abrupt, and it was like a short little edit. Like they just kind of, he said 2 or 3 sentences and then they cut it. And it was kind of like, oh, these two guys don't like each other. Then you go on to learn that Maya and Sebastian at one point, and maybe still are, a couple, a romantic couple. And no wonder Sebastian's like, hey, this guy, almost killed my girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever they are, if in fact they are still a couple, I don't know.
They were a couple at the time. So I think Sebastian definitely was, sympathetic to his girlfriend who has almost died that day. And the other umbrage that they took was Carlos paddled back out. Maya gets taken to the hospital in the ambulance and Carlos gets back on the ski and goes back out and surfs for the rest of the day. So I think that's really where they felt like, if this is a partnership and, you towed me into that wave and obviously you rescued me as well, but you think he'd accompany her to the hospital just to double check on her.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
From Carlos's standpoint, he's like, but those are the professionals that'll take care of you. The waves are only going to be here for another few hours, and we were here for this,
And he also had responsibilities with other guys in the water.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't the only one that he was mentoring and or partnering with out there. There was others, right? There was Scooby and I don't know, was it Luca? Might have been Chumba or somebody else. I forget.
No, it wasn't. I forget the other guy's name. But fascinating drama that we were unaware of until now.
Yeah, and really great interviews. And these things are always wonderful because we get to see and learn about people much deeper than we know them just through looking at Instagram or whatever, And I really enjoyed learning more about that Nazare conundrum is what I've termed it. So
there's a number of conundrums that this brought up. But I will say I've pointed to 100 Foot Wave as the series on HBO as doing a very good job telling the story of surfing at Nazare. And I like the series a lot. Huge fan, actually. This was better than that. To me, this was, especially just for a surf nerd, who's maybe for my wife, she would maybe prefer 100 Foot Wave. But like for me, who's in the thick of it, paying close attention, I liked this episode more than I've liked any episode of 100 Foot Wave. So again, congratulations, Stab Magazine. But the other dramas, I would say, that they brought up and kind of analyzed and got people to speak on.
Can I just real quick go back to the Maya stuff and just say something that you mentioned that I didn't know, which was that they licensed this interview footage from Maya from another interview. They're basically relitigating something that I'm assuming Maya didn't want to relitigate because it's already been done. And I'm sure they reached out to her at some point and she was like, no. And then they were like, well, we can just license this footage from this guy because you signed away on it. That's interesting to me that you just brought that to light.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes, you can presume all those things that you just said. I would presume the same. I think they probably it's a story they wanted to tell and needed to tell. They had multiple people's perspective on it. The one person they didn't have is Maya. So they had to make a decision. Do we just leave Maya's perspective out? We've reached out to her. She doesn't want to participate, presumably. So, or she's told this story before. And I want to say the date of that Graham Benziger interview was within the last 5 years. It wasn't ancient. Like it's relatively modern. I could look it up. So yeah, that is interesting. The other kind of controversies that they get into are the politics and shenanigans and the big wave awards, just like awarding things. And then of course the controversy about size. Like, how do you measure a wave? You know, so those are other topics.
Well, look, it's just like the never-ending argument about the incomplete and unscientific nature of attempting to measure wave height, and is in fact it just a big sham because everybody acknowledges it can't be done, even the people that are trying to do it. And you got a real sense that some of the hardcore. It's funny when I say hardcore, I mean it's almost like there's people that are doing it to make money. And there's people that are doing it for the love of it. And, oh, if we can make a few shekels here, that's great too. But I'm doing it no matter what. And I'm not here to throw shade. I can't assess what's deep within someone's heart regarding, you know, their efforts or what's driving them to do things. But it seems like the hardcore, I guess what I'm doing is I'm pointing to Albie Layer and I'm going, Albie reminds me of the guy that's just doing it no matter what, right? And he's kind of saying, look, the whole measuring of waves is silly. It's stupid. It doesn't work. Nobody can do it. There's much more to a big wave ride than the vertical nature of the wave face. And so, yeah.
He does state that. The one thing that I'll pick apart a little bit is Albie is doing it for the money as much as anybody else. I think that he...
Yeah, but I think Albie's doing it regardless. It's just that the money just happens to be there. I'm saying... I guess what I'm saying is there anybody that sticks out to you as somebody that wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for the bounty?
No. I mean, maybe Sebastian Stutner, to be honest. I mean, I don't know, but I've never heard of him until I saw him riding 60-foot waves. You know what I mean? So I think he had a very specific...
You mean target? You don't see him like on trips to the Mento Eyes putting up edits and stuff like that?
No, I don't. But look, I don't know him personally, so I can't say that. I'd have to actually have a conversation with him. I guess what I would like to tease apart real quick is some people are naturally good at marketing. So Mark Fu, the aforementioned Mark Fu, loved big wave surfing and has a natural penchant for marketing himself. And those things go hand in hand. I think that's the class that Albie Layer falls into. He was out there already doing it. He would be doing it no matter what, even if he was making a living as a plumber, which is a reference to Andrew Cotton, was making his living as a plumber. They're still spending the money they earn from plumbing to go out and pursue this thing. Albie has enough awareness that there are people making money off surfing, so he figures out how to market himself. What you're asking is there a separate class that is really only focused on the marketing and they recognize that sport I can make money at, so I'm going to go out and pursue that thing?
And also flip side, are there guys that only go just to go surfing and could care less if there's a photographer?
100%. That absolutely exists. And I would know their name if they were marketing themselves, but I don't know their names, you know what I mean? But there's dozens of those people at every big wave lineup around the world. We don't know their names.
Is there a gray area? Like, would some of these guys who we know love surfing and love big wave surfing, would they fly to a huge cloud break swell if there wasn't in the back of their mind a potential payday or, you know, a responsibility to their sponsors to be there?
No, I mean, I said Sebastian's name just because he is branded like a NASCAR. You know what I mean? Like, he has a bunch of sponsors, and I only ever see him coming through their channels, basically, their promotion of him. So that's the only reason I mention him. But it's not fair for me to say that because there's way better ways to make a living. Like, there's way too much risk of your own life if you're unqualified to be in those waves, and way little, very not guaranteed, small payout. So the risk and reward is not worth it. You could go make more money. I mean,
we don't know the depth or really the intricacies of his contract. Like, Red Bull's probably just paying him a yearly salary to just show up.
He's sponsored by Porsche, too.
Okay, whoever. Porsche, right? So they're not saying, look, you don't get paid unless you get a picture. They're just like, dude, you're in. Here's your check. Thanks for doing it. Keep doing it.
So they discussed this a little bit, and I had never even heard of this before, but Andrew Cotton mentioned this phrase, straight and inflate, which he doesn't mention anybody by name, but he says there is there's a group of people who are willing to take off and go straight to the bottom, basically straighten out, because that's where you can make the wave look larger in a photograph, knowing you're not going to be able to make the wave itself. You're not going to be able to complete the ride. You will get mowed down by the whitewash. But if you can get the photo at the bottom, know you're going to get wiped out, and then you can inflate your vest, straight and inflate. The inflatable vest was not available 20 years ago, so that wasn't even a thing. It was just people trying to survive the wave. But now you can go straight, get the photo, bail, inflate, survive, and take that photo, get sponsors from it, make money, potentially win the XXL awards or the record or what, the Guinness Book of World Records.
I'm sensing a whole new category of big wave surfers where there's no inflation vest, and we have an awards ceremony for the guys that can do it without. Now, we'll allow skis. You can go get picked up, but you're going to have to take the thing on the head, and it might be 2 or 3 or 4 waves. What do you think about this?
It's irresponsible to not use
They've been doing it like that for decades
until something better was invented. You know, like you'd be foolish to actually try to push yourself to the limits in those conditions without having a failsafe. That's like Dean Potter. You mentioned, we never talked about it on air after you mentioned it the first time, but you mentioned the Dark Wizard documentary on HBO.
Yes.
I texted you later that week saying it's the best documentary I've watched in a very long time.
Yes.
I burned through all 4 episodes, but that is an equivalent here. It's like, dude, you have put life-saving equipment available to you. Just use it. Like, why aren't you using it?
Yeah, but see, that's not the essence of the art of big wave surfing. That's not the essence. Dean Potter was very much an artist in some way, not even in some way, a very obvious way. Like, some of the stuff he did was super artistic, and not the least of which is, you know, crazy jumps, but even some of the, like the photography that he did, and even his journal and stuff. So getting back to big wave surfers, there's an art to big wave surfing. And there's a purity that I think Dean Potter was after on some level. And I think there's probably a purity that some of these hardcore big wave surfers can appreciate and see and want to elevate. And perhaps if it's not a contest, I was sort of half joking, but perhaps there's a cultural move a little bit towards that, hey, let's see who's really into this. You know, and look, I know there's a ski, but I'm telling you, I'm in shape. And oh, by the way, you know, like Buzzy Kerbox, these guys did this. I don't think that there was vests when they made In God's Hands, when those guys were when Derek Dorner was throwing himself over the ledge as a stunt guy.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There is a huge big wave surfing population that does not wear inflation. Yeah. So
should that be perhaps, I don't want to say elevated, but should it be highlighted or excavated within the media like we're trying to do now?
I don't think I don't think that'd be like saying, should we honor and uplift those who don't wear helmets at Pipeline? No. It's great. It's cool that some guys don't, but you should actually be elevating the ones who do, because lives will be saved. You know what I mean? Like, I'm impressed by those who don't. I'm impressed by those who don't wear inflation, but I don't think that there's any point in.
But you're not impressed enough to kind of go, hey, that guy's actually a purist.
No, not at all. I mean,
okay.
Do you feel like somebody not wearing a helmet at Pipeline is more pure than those who did or do?
No, I do not.
Yeah, me neither. It's like, I respect that they don't want to, and it's impressive that they survive without it, but it's not more pure than
so
freaking
Sebastian.
Not more pure than Tom Carroll, not more pure than Liam McNamara. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I agree.
Yeah.
So Sebastian, getting back to the original point, Sebastian going to the bottom and getting the, what is it? Go straight and inflate.
Well, Sebastian.
I mean, we're assuming that they were pointing to Sebastian. We shouldn't throw him under the bus. Let's say whoever it is.
So Sebastian won his Guinness record without straight and inflate. He made the wave.
Right. So I don't, and so let's not let's just say whoever these people are that go straight and inflate for the sake of getting a photo, right? That's different, right, than wearing a helmet at pipe. They're doing this thing just for the commercial viability of it rather than actually what's called on the person to do, which is make the wave, ride high and kick out, survive.
Yeah.
Hold on for just a sec. I got to go handle something.
All right.
My wife. Okay, thanks. I interrupted you. You were saying something good.
Was I? What was it about? Remind me of my genius.
Well, here's a question for you, okay?
Okay.
Are there people who have wiped out, who without an inflatable vest and a ski wouldn't be out there, where in the past they were out there?
No question about it, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's not because I spend time in those lineups and I can say that, but I've heard the big wave community talking about that for now a decade.
Yeah. So I just think there's like purists that, I don't know why, I think maybe it's, I'm trying to excavate why I feel this way, but I feel like purists should be called out for their purity. And I'm not saying stupidity, I'm just saying there's something wonderful about the Roger Ericssons of the world that were charging outer reefs in 1977 or whatever, and just doing it, and no one even knows about it. And I think that's kind of cool, and it's got like a Dean Potter kind of vibe to it.
100% agree with you. I don't think that life vests are the delineation line. You know what I mean? Yeah. So one thing that I was unaware of that Slater and Andrew Cotton talk about in this episode is the tourism community that's developed in Nazare specifically for the tourist surfer who wants to show up and hire a tow team and a safety team to go out with them that day when the waves are big. And we should be clear that does exist in other big wave spots, but it's not available to a random tourist. It's available to Laura Enever and Felicity Palmatier when they're on the North Shore and the eddy gets called off and they want to go surf, the outer reefs. They talk about that. They hire Daniel Russo to shoot some photos of them and they hire a ski team to help them out, but it's well-established, qualified, competent professionals. What they were talking about in Nazare is it's just like going to rent a bicycle. You can go over and rent a safety team and a tow team that will take you out and put you into life-threatening surf. The problem here is you're not just risking your own life, you're risking the lives of everybody else out there who actually is qualified and professional. So it's become a circus there more than anywhere else. Although I would say Chopu is right there because this last run of swell that we've seen in Chopu the last month or two looked insane to me. And the boats, the boats themselves were putting surfers at risk.
Yeah, I sense Chopu probably sorts itself out a little bit.
Well, there was a news story this last week at Chopu that they actually did regulate it. I don't know who the governing body was, but they kicked everybody out of the water. They're like, until we can figure out a solution for how to implement a strategy here, clear the water out. And the waves are like 12 feet and just absolutely like all time. And they cleared the whole lineup out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they would just clear the boats and go, look, but then how do the surfers have to take a ski out there, I guess? Andrew Cotton made the greatest comparison, which was Everest, Mount Everest. Just hire a Sherpa, get my photo on the first peak, and fly me home via helicopter.
Yep. So let's kind of bigger picture this episode real quick. The interviews that they got were incredible. They had, and so there's 20 people that get interviewed. Gerlach, Twiggy, Kai Lenny, Greg Long, Bill Sharp, Mike Parsons, who's amazing. Rob Brown. They discussed the Rob Brown trip out to Cortez.
I really enjoyed that segment of the show.
Me too.
The whole Cortez mission with Parsons and Greg Long and Brad Gerlach and Rob Brown. And I think there was a couple other. Was Peter Mell on that?
No. It was, that was it. It was Greg and who's Greg's towing partner? I'm spacing right now, but it was Gerlach and Mike as a tow team, and then Rob Brown, of course, getting the boat, and then and shooting photos, and then Greg Long, and the name will come to us.
Was it Skin Dog?
No, was it? Could have been Skin Dog actually. In terms of other interviews, Laird, Kelly, Russell Bierke. Fantastic to see Russell Bierke. We don't see enough of him. Andrew Cotton, Daniel Russo, Laurent Pujol, who I think or Pujol, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. I haven't ever heard from him before, but I've admired his work forever.
Yeah.
Carlos Burle, Harry Bryant makes an appearance. Obviously, Sebastian Stutner. So,
Benjamin Sanchez was my favorite.
dude, so good. And that's the core lord that you're talking
That's the
about.
core lord guy. Yeah, that's the guy who's like, I didn't even make the wave, so whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm moving on.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't even submit it. Like, I got the photos. Who cares? I was there. Yeah.
That's the kind of guy I was like, this guy is the kind of guy that you can tell the sincerity that comes out of him. He just wants to ride big waves. And I just feel like somehow, without like creating accolades or a monetary value or commercial quotient to it, he should be elevated. And I guess that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Well,
He's the winner, David. He's the winner.
yeah, I no doubt about it. I mean, his peers point to him as one of the winners, you know? I'll start by saying Gerlach, I always love hearing from. He is so entertaining and has so much texture to his storytelling that it's just like I could listen to that guy talk about whatever, you know?
Let me ask you this. This is nothing about Brad. I didn't understand the opening edit. How is a story about Carmen Electra, like why did Stab put in this story about Carmen Electra and basically, you know, it just didn't, with bounty hunters. Like I was having a hard time going, okay, this is about bounty hunters. What's the connection? Did I miss something, David? Because quite frankly, I could have. Help me out here.
No, you didn't miss anything. It was just a salacious hook to give you some juicy gossip at the beginning.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, it was to introduce Brad as a character because he is a big wave surfer and plays prominently into the big wave storyline. But that specific story was just a salacious TMZ bit to hook you.
Yeah.
Weren't you interested to hear that he dated Carmen Electra?
Yeah, no, I was. It was.
Yeah.
But I will say this: that it was a moment that my wife got off the couch and went, "I'm out. I'm not watching this."
That's funny. Well, so his partner Mike Parsons, I mean, obviously very astute,
Yeah.
scholar, like smart, like
Yeah.
it's just really refreshing to hear from him. Very analytical,
Yeah.
very qualified, very capable. Like I really enjoyed Mike's contributions to this one.
Totally agree. It's funny when I think of Parsons, I also think of Luke Egan. Like they're kind of cut from the same cloth. Like they're just super professional, like super, as you mentioned, super analytical, kind of real even keeled, not a ton of, you know, ups and downs, and just professional. You know, and I don't think you can get enough Mike Parsons interviews. He just always brings insight that's appreciated.
I agree. I'm a big fan. Andrew Cotton, I've interviewed him for Surf Splendor at least once, maybe twice now. So I've talked to him quite a bit. I've really grown to appreciate him. Like he is, I think that he's earned everything that he's gotten. He's gotten to a point of being one of the greatest big wave surfers in the world, especially at Nazare. And he wasn't always, but he's put in, and he wasn't compensated for it originally. So I feel like there's these examples of people who get branded and they're great at marketing or whatever, and they get a bunch of access early and then they have to kind of prove themselves. I feel like it actually went the opposite for Andrew, where he always had to prove himself more than he was compensated for. And so now, 20 years on, he's at a level of world recognition and he has these big brand partnerships and he does it professionally for a living and he's earned every bit of it. And his insights, he's also not very like flamboyant, you know, he's just like matter of fact.
Yeah.
And so I very much trust his insights and his perspectives when he's telling the stories.
Yeah, exactly. There's some sort of blue collar workman sincerity that shines through, where you're just like, yeah, you know, I believe what he's saying and I trust him with my kids if I had to leave. You
Totally.
know what I mean?
So the other drama that was related to the Maya Burley Stutner conversation was a punch up that happened in the lineup at Nazare at sunset during a massive swell where people had a tangle up on a wave and then somebody threw punches after the fact. So that was during the filming of 100-foot wave, and 100-foot wave did not address the drama at all, but they did get Carlos and Kai Lenny and a couple of other people to speak on it. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was great. And how about the artistic impressions that you weren't down with the AI that they had?
It was AI slop. I actually put that in my notes as don't lower yourself to this Stab magazine. Like, they didn't have imagery of the punch itself, so they came up with AI slop renderings to represent what they didn't have footage of, and I just thought, oh god, this is a new low, actually. Did you like it?
I mean, I didn't take it as sort of critically as you have here. You knew that what it was. At first, I was like, "Whoa, they got photos of this. The guy took pictures." And then they're like, in the corner it says, I think it said artistic impression or artistic rendering or something. And I was like, "Oh," as Carlos or whoever was telling the story, they would throw an image of like Maya jumping off her ski, trying to get involved in the fight. And I mean, I'm sure that stuff happened. So the question is, are Carlos's words powerful enough for my imagination to get it, or do I need that? And I don't think that I probably need that. I think my imagination's pretty good.
Well, it's a tried and true device in documentary to cut to animation.
Yes.
To show a dramatized version of the storytelling when you don't have the footage.
Yes.
But using AI slop to do it, I thought was offensive.
You know what we used I did a documentary once, and we used a guy who did really great, sort of like those, that old school animation where you draw and then you flip through it. Each page has a clip in the animation.
Yeah.
You go, and you clip it. But anyway, yeah.
Look, I'm not above using AI slop. Okay. Like I will be in a bind at some point in the coming months and I will then use it myself. I'm just saying Stab's creating a really quality product. And I feel like that denigrated the quality of the product. I was disappointed to see them do it.
So I got to say, I really enjoyed Carlos Brulé.
So dude,
I really enjoy, there's a sense of sincerity with him too. Like there's this, and I've met him a long, long time ago. I met him on the North Shore. He's a really cool guy. He's a very nice human being.
He is a guy who I have completely overlooked, intentionally so, because I'm not into big wave surfing, and he's like over there and I just like, whatever. I'm sure he's cool, but I don't care. I agree with you. Like, he is a dude I would love to hang out with and spend time with, have a meal with, pick his brain, admire him, inspired by him now. Like, seems fantastic.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, all the interviews were great. Like I can't really pinpoint one where you were just kind of disappointed. Everybody brought all of these guys. I think that Sam and the Stab guys have done a really good job of knowing now, like, you know what, unless you're engaging and helping with moving the story along, we don't need to put a talking head in here.
Well, the final conversation that I think we need to discuss a little bit is this conversation of measuring big waves, which to a person, all the experts who've set the records say there's no objective way to measure these waves. And in fact, the people who have won big wave records did not ride the biggest wave that year. Here's a footage, actually, Kai Lenny took umbrage directly with Maya Gabiera, who won a particular year, and he goes, look at my wave. My wave is bigger. And they show him on a right that to me is bigger than the one that Maya won the award for. So all of the politics involved we could probably discuss too, but the size question I've discussed with Garrett McNamara. I've discussed it with the big wave surfers themselves. And the one thing that comes up from all of them is they need to figure out a way to measure either energy or magnitude. And I don't know how you come up with that equation, but height definitely matters. but the amount of energy at the point that the person's riding the wave is really what should be being measured. Because an argument could be made that an 8-foot wave at Chopu contains the same magnitude per square cubic foot or whatever as a 30-foot wave at Waimea. So therefore, the heights are very almost irrelevant. So again, we don't know how you would measure this. Science can figure it out. And there could even be some sort of a device at the bottom of the surfboard that is collecting data, but those things all need to be taken into consideration before you can actually put any real weight behind these Guinness World Records.
I sense that the biggest waves that have ever been ridden are at the Cortez Bank. I think that realm is like next level, 200 miles off the coast. The way that Mike Parsons and Greg Long talked about that day and that session, and the way that Brad Gerlach talked about those waves that were coming in, you could tell they were just like, this is like the biggest waves we've ever seen, but on steroids. Forgive the cliche. I don't know. I'm not a big wave surfer. I've never been out there, but the images you see, man, it's just, it looks like that's really the realm. That spot is the realm where,
I agree with you. I co-sign that. And I would also say there was one distinct difference from their storytelling than I've ever heard from anybody else's storytelling. And it was, I never want to go back out and witness that again.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like they saw the devil.
Yeah.
Or like they've seen something that they didn't want to see and they wish maybe they didn't see it. And that's a great way to put it, David. Yes.
In every other big wave storytelling, there's a wanting of more. There's like, I want to go out and get the next big day or a bigger day, And that was the one time I've ever heard anybody talk about a session where all three of them, Greg Long, Brad Gerlach, and Mike separately said, never need to do that again.
Yeah. Massive. And so to kind of circle back to your point, Greg Long, all three of them said Greg Long caught the biggest wave that day. Mike Parsons won the XXL Awards or Big Wave Awards or whatever it was from that session, but they all agreed that Greg was on a bigger wave. Rob Brown just didn't get the photo because of a lumpy swell in front of it or whatever. You mentioned Kai with Maya. Kai believes his wave was as big or bigger. And then there was another wave there. I think it was Luca caught a massive wave, but rode the wave correctly, which was up, take the high line. Therefore, you don't have that perspective of the go straight and inflate. That I guess it was Sebastian or maybe somebody else. It was somebody else, but here's go ahead.
Sebastian made his wave too. The problem was that Kai, I think, explained with Lucas Chumbo's wave is that it closed out, and so he kicked out of it. So he was actually, like you said, on a higher line, knowing he wasn't going to be able to ride safely to the shoulder. But when you look at that wave in its totality, it definitely, to me, looked like a bigger wave. And with the closeout on it, had a lot more energy, too, to discuss the kind of magnitude conversation.
And there was also a wave ridden where for the first time, I don't want to say ever, but we saw a wave actually break top to bottom at Nazare, which gave you perspective of how tall the wave actually is when it's heaving. When all of a sudden it's not an 80-foot wave, it's a 30-foot wave. And I don't know. The other thing that I want to bring up is the sort of the finality of, or the final point, I guess I should say, is that from a commercial vantage, the money's just not there anymore. Those guys were basically saying it's dried up. Like, why are we doing this if we're not going to get paid for it?
I found
and it was
that
sort of a paradox. There was a bit of a like, well, which is it? Are you guys into this thing for the love of it, or is it if the money's not there, we're out?
Yeah, I found that to be a little disingenuous because Andrew Cotton sang that wearing his Red Bull hat. Albie Layer sang it wearing his Rockstar hat. So what they were saying was there's not one big paycheck attached to one big wave. But I guarantee you there's more money being made as a collective of big wave surfers now than there was back in the day.
There's just not one big awards ceremony anymore where there's a massive evening where the whole thing is celebrated and the community gets together and it's like, here's the check and let's all go crazy and boy, this is fun. And now it's just like you get a phone call in the car and they're like, hey, let's do a quick interview and we'll send you a check for $5,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. So Albie, that's the story that Albie told, and that's accurate. But by the way, Albie, you're getting paid monthly by a bunch of different brands for that performance. So I think that, and that wasn't happening back in the day. Back in the day, everybody was fighting for one big paycheck, you know? So I think that there is more money to go around now. But to help them make their point, if there was an awards ceremony and some central event to celebrate at the end of the year, that would attract more sponsors that could spread money out throughout the course of the year. You know, like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that's a worthy conversation, but they're still, those guys that they interviewed are still getting paid.
And to circle back to the judging of wave size and stuff, I recall the very first, I think it was the very first one, the K2 Awards, and they were very meticulous in how they determined the largest wave. And this is classic because Flippy Hoffman was one of the judges, you know. I mean, that's so great, you know, when you have Flippy Hoffman going, that's not a big wave, just being a salty dog. I'm pretty sure Evan Slater was one of the judges. I know Bill Sharp, of course, was involved in it. And there might have been somebody else like Sam George or Art Brewer, maybe even. I can't imagine they had a photographer there, but because unless he didn't have one entered into the didn't submit a photo. But I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think it's gotten any better since that was 97. Has it? I think they're still trying to figure out how to do it. And
Well,
we're 30 years later.
Well, what they kind of a subtext of this episode was that it's actually gotten worse. There's a traditional way, let's say a pure way of which Bill Sharp does describe of this person is, 5'10", but they're crouched. So let's call it 5'2". Here's where we're going to determine as the trough and here's where we're going to determine as the crest. And now let's go ahead and just take that stance and multiply it. And that's the number that you come up with.
Yeah.
What Kai Lenny explained the difference for Maya winning the award was some new method that they came up with that is not related to that very simplistic way of measuring, that is trying to calculate for other variables that then convolutes the whole thing. So the subtext being there are sponsorships involved, dollars involved, and politics involved that are influencing how these things are scored that are not actually accurate. They're not an accurate reflection of the height of the wave. And specifically, somebody tells the story, I think it was Daniel Russo tells the story of, he submitted a wave of Scion Moloski surfing an outer reef on the North Shore to Bill Sharp for the XXL Awards. And Bill Sharp's reply was, we're not going to accept that submission. You should shoot guys that are sponsored by Billabong or Monster, because Billabong and Monster were sponsoring the XXL Awards. And so that is as damning an indictment as I've ever seen. But I think it is actually reflective of the way that these award ceremonies have operated in the surf world.
Well, I think perhaps more than any other episode, I feel like this one has inflamed a lot of egos and a lot of passion, and it's just continued to kind of stir the pot that was already being stirred by large egos and big money. I feel like there's probably, I just feel like Sam's inbox is probably loaded with some heated emails from people who maybe feel like they didn't get equal time or their viewpoint didn't get adequately put out there. But I'm just assuming that. Let me finish by this. I did use Claude this morning, and I asked him about Maya and Sebastian and their relationship. And Maya and her former boyfriend and tow partner are not married, but their relationship ended in 2021, but they remain surfing partners despite the split.
Good for them.
Two incredible big wave surfers. She holds the women's world record at Nazare, and he holds the men's world record.
Dynamic duo.
Eyebrows raised.
There,
Does this do a disservice to the Guinness Book of World Records, by the way?
yes, dude. By the way, they've done themselves a disservice. I don't know if you've tracked the different records that they give.
Yeah, but were they ever even held in high esteem? I mean, longest fingernails, like who has the the largest bicuspid teeth, or like who? It's always been sort of a Travis sham mockery.
100%. Yeah, no, it is a freak show, basically. Here are some bizarre Guinness Book of World Records, just in addition to the ones you already named. Most objects in a beard. longest continuous urine stream. Farthest eyeball pop. Longest time buried alive. Most feet sniffed. Do you want to guess? Do you want to guess who has the record or what the record is of most feet sniffed?
Is it like in a time span?
Well, it took 15 years for Malign Albright to sniff 5,600 individual feet, and she holds the record.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Highest number ever counted. Jeremy Harper of Alabama live streamed himself counting out loud to 1 million. The process took 89 days to complete.
Why didn't you just make it 1,000,001? Like, just keep going.
So, to your point, no, the Guinness Book is meaningless. Like, it is a Travis sham mockery.
Yeah.
But there's money attached to it. There's sponsorships attached to it. I'm sure Red Bull was thrilled when Maya got that. And Sebastian, I think you're right, that he is sponsored by them as well. Great looking couple, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have kids. Look, we've got the Super El Nino big wave season upon us. It is, at the very least, what's the name for it if it's not a Super El Nino, but it's not an El Nino? There's a term in between. A giant El Nino? Great El Nino?
Fair to Midland El Nino?
Anyway, it's going to be the El Nino is here, whether or not it funnels the appropriate energy and moisture in the atmosphere to spin low pressures like we've never seen before, and thereby creating waves. We shall see. But what does this episode say about the upcoming Northern Hemisphere winter? And what do you expect to see? I mean, are your big wave? Have you been satiated, or are you seeking and excited about the big wave season?
It's funny. I actually did think about that. Like, wow, now am I a big wave fan? And the reality is, no, I love the role that it's played in my life. When it breaks a record, I get to see it, or potentially breaks a record and makes mainstream news. I get to see the.
No, I did not see this, but I'm already psyched on it. What's not to love? What a great wave restaurants is. Probably, I bet if you were to poll every surfer in the world and you were to say, what's your favorite wave that you've, ridden? I bet restaurants is number one. I bet restaurants comes up as the number one favorite wave of surfers around the world. If you've been there, like, you obviously you would have had to experience it. It's got everything. There's a bar on the beach where your wife can hoot and holler while you're ripping and video you. It really is. It's unreal. That whole. I'm a big fan of Viore clothes, quite frankly, as a yoga guy, but not even yoga guy. I just wear this stuff around. I guess they got surf trunks now. Is that what they're doing? They're pimping their Viore surf trunks. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, they're great ambassadors for the sport and for the culture and for the lifestyle. And pretty cool. Look at them rip. Wow, restaurants. That, that might be Cloudbreak. Yeah. Cool, man. All right. Look, David, we've said a lot. Lots been said. Don't forget the boardroom show is coming up in 4 months, 3.5 months. We're honoring Maurice Cole, and booth space is filling up quick. And I'm pretty psyched. I had a meeting with Phil Roberts. Phil Roberts is going to have a huge art installation, including Jerry Lopez and some other artists. So pretty stoked about that. And look, David, until next time, adios and aloha.